scheme.
It's a Ponzi scheme. And they have these salesmen that go out, they're selling a product, and it's not necessarily that they're selling the product itself. They're not selling the Book of Mormon. They're selling the religion. They're selling the whole package. And, for only 10% of your paycheck, you can join and be part of the club too. Doesn't that sound great? And, they get a few converts for that. But they had this problem. When I was growing up, it was when you turn 19 years old, that's when you go on your mission. And, for women, it's 21. Well, they had this problem of that fantasy land between 18 of graduating high school and 19 going on your mission. The young men were wondering, okay, well, what do I do? Do I get a mission to help pay for or do I get a job to help pay for the mission? Do I go to school for a year and then try and come back after I get back from my mission for 2 years? I mean, what they were wondering what to do. Well, so many of these 18-year-old boys would dabble into the internet or into gaming or into something or into unsalty or the salt of life, the unsalty pleasures of the world, and the church would not like this, and they would lose a large contingency of these prospective missionaries in that 1 year period from 18 to 19. So they just changed it where anybody that is now 18 years old that wants to go on a mission, they can go. And women, it's still 19. I don't know why. Because I'm pretty sure that most 19-year-old women are more mature than 18-year-old boys. But anyway.
By far. By
far and away. But regardless, it's all about this, not letting them go and have their 1 year like Rumspringa. And then, don't let them have that and then just keep them in the insular lifestyle and then send them off on their missions. And when they come back, then they can go to college at BYU and then, never drink and then get married and then have hateful little children of, exact mirror copies of themselves and keep the indoctrination cycle going. And it just works really well. So in that respect, the Mormon missionary force isn't usually for proselyting. It has much less impressive numbers of people that it's bringing into the church than it does people that they're retaining that are missionaries, right? So
pretty much once they finish, then that if they went through the whole missionary thing, you pretty much got them from then on. Yeah, from then on, exactly. And that's one recurring theme is, a lot of Mormons talk about their mission. They went on their mission because it was such an important part of their life, and it was this huge turning point, right? Because they grew up in the church very strongly, whatever, and then they go out away from the church for 2 whole years. 2 years they get to go to a foreign land, whether it's another state or it's a whole other country or another continent, whatever. They get to go out and experience the world, but they're still experiencing it with arguably a much more cult-framed mindset. So Mormon church in and of itself is very, very cult-like in the way that it's structured, and it's, the power structure is set up very strongly, and it's a pyramid scheme, a Ponzi scheme, basically. Well, when you're on your mission, it's much more rigid. There are high, strict dress codes. The only individuality you get in your own dressing is your tie, and that's why missionaries have 3,000 ties. And then you're given a very set structured schedule. You wake up, you do scripture study and exercise, then you go proselyting, then you have your hour break for lunch, and then you go proselyte, and then you do follow-up interviews, and then blah, 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 and then you go to bed. And you wake up and you do the same exact thing over and over and over for 2 years straight. Those people, it's going to be a lot harder for those people to break away from the church than it is somebody that just says, oh, I like Mormonism, sure, dunk me. And then they realize that it's bullshit and they leave. So it's a lot stronger of a mechanism to keep somebody insulated into that mindset if they can go anywhere in the world, spend 2 years there, and never ever deviate from what is considered righteousness in Mormonism. Yeah, what you were just explaining, it sounds like reprogramming, or the old term would be brainwashing,
Yeah.
That could mentally break someone down doing the same exact thing every day, and you're hearing the same thing every day. Like I said, that's, reprogramming.
Oh, yeah. And if it tells you anything about how the effectiveness of the missionary force, I can't say that these stats are exact, but I heard this on Irreligiosophy, which is an amazing podcast. Highly recommend that one. But when the church made that change from 19-year-olds to 18-year-olds being the cutoff age to go on your mission, I think they had like almost a 50% increase in the number of missionaries that went out there. They had this huge influx of new missionaries, right? It was some like 40-something thousand new missionaries. Their numbers as far as getting new people to the church, I think it only increased like 15%. Out of that huge increase of number of missionaries, they only got like a 15% actual, increase in new members. So, as far as effective as a salesman tactic, the missionary force isn't really that great, but as far as, an indoctrination tactic, mission works great. It's amazing.
Well, to be honest, here's a better analogy that I'd like to posit to you that you might use from here on out is, I'm a former military Marine myself. So 3 months of my life, it was nothing but Marine Corps history, Marine Corps, speak, and just mental breakdown and then building you back up. It sounds a lot like boot camp, to be honest.
Yeah, that actually, I hadn't thought about the connections there, but yeah, I mean, in much the same way that it's a very immersive experience being in the military, you don't get anything outside of the military except on leave days. The same thing is the case with Mormon, with the missionaries, exactly. But with missionaries, you can only call home twice a year, whereas, I don't know the stipulations on that with the military.
Well, I got one phone call during boot camp. Well, two. Yeah, I did get two. One to say, yes, I'm here, and that was it. You hang up the phone, and then like 1 week before graduation, you got to call your parents. So
exactly. Same thing, cutting you off from the outside world.
Well, while we're talking about missionaries, what would you consider the best way? Say if couple of missionaries, even though they're probably 18, 19 years old, we'll call them elders. I know you're supposed to call them elders.
Yep.
What's the best way to handle them?
Well, I mean, there's a few different tactics. It's a matter of if you want the shock and awe or if you want to actually be effective, right? So, yeah. I mean, if you want, you can confront them with all kinds of Mormon history and problems in the Book of Mormon. And, you can say, well, so the Book of Mormon was the one true book revealed to, from God to Joseph Smith, and it was translated perfectly. And, there shouldn't be any mistakes in it. Then why have there been over 5,000 changes from the 1830 version to this version? That's a stumper question. That's a shock and awe question. You're not going to get very far talking to a Mormon missionary if you just throw those stump questions at them, because they're trained to shut down when that happens. They're trained that they're being told anti-Mormon stuff, that they need to block out whatever's coming in. But if you're very open, if you have a lot of knowledge about Mormonism or the Book of Mormon, or if you're just open to asking them questions and having them answer the questions, I think it can be a very good and very engaging conversation. It's all about a matter of, just not being a dick. If you're a dick, they're going to shut down. If you're not a dick, they might open up. They might talk to you. You might be able to tell them one or two things that are really, really fascinating. So instead of, taking the attack of, why are all these changes in the Book of Mormon? You can say, so, how was the Book of Mormon, how was it brought to the world? And they'll tell you the story of Joseph Smith and blah, blah, blah. And then you'll say, oh, so Joseph would read off from the glow. He would read that to the scribe, and the scribe would read it back to him. And then they would make sure that both sentences were perfectly accurate, and then they would move on to the next sentence. So it sounds like this is a very, very perfect book. I wonder if they've ever changed it. Do you know if they've ever made any changes in the Book of Mormon? You see, the difference in approach is a matter of if you're going to set up their wall or if you're going to tear down their defensive wall. And it's just a matter of how long you want the conversation to go. If you're throwing zingers at them, it's going to get shut down in 10 minutes. If you're actually having an open conversation and you feed them a meal, or you ask them to come help you with some yard work, it's actually going to open up into a good conversation, and you're going to have a lot more positive effect on those missionaries than anybody that just is spewing anti-Mormon venom at them. So, yeah.
So it's probably better to give them the carrot and the stick instead of just the stick.
Right, exactly. Yes. Put a carrot on the end of the stick. Yeah. See where that'll lead them. Because for the most part, missionaries are very smart. They've been taught their line of apologetics, their very, very limited apologetics to get them through the day, but they know their lessons. They know the lessons really, really, really well. So if you can get their mind off of the lessons and thinking about the church as a whole, but leading them there nicely, getting them to think about it instead of telling them stuff and then asking them to think about them or making them think about them, leading them to tell them something, to think about something or think that maybe Joseph Smith wasn't the one true prophet or something. Or if you say, what about Joseph Smith's revelations? Did all of Joseph Smith's revelations come true? And they can say, well, nobody knows that. I don't even know how a missionary would respond to that. But we know that Joseph Smith gave a lot of revelations that failed, that were completely false. One example of this was when the Book of Mormon was about to be printed, Joseph tried to sell the copyright for it for $8,000 in Canada. He received.
I was just thinking about that.
Right, yeah, he received 2 separate revelations, sending up a group of guys to go to Canada across the lake and sell the copyright for a certain amount of money. He told them through divine revelation given to him from God where to go. The guys went there. Nobody there knew what they were talking about when it came to buying a copyright for an obscene amount of money. Nobody there knew, because that was just that was not something that they would do, just buying a book from a random guy like this or buying a copyright from a random guy on the street. You had to be vetted. It had to be a useful book. It had to be a historical book or something. And the Book of Mormon was not that. So
I'm shocked. I'm completely shocked.
Right? It's just astonishing, isn't it? But yeah. So they came back from Canada these 2 separate times, and then when one of the Whitmer brothers asked Joseph, you gave us revelations from God saying that we could sell this copyright in Canada for $8,000. You told us which city to go to. You told us everything. Revelation from God that's supposed to be incontrovertibly true. And, but it wasn't true. It didn't come true. And then Joseph just spouted off the line of some revelations are of God, some are from men, and even some are from the devil.
But see, the cool thing is, if Joe had future sight, he could have said, well, you're right. I wasn't supposed to sell it for $8,000. That was the devil that was talking. Now look at the church, 150 years later and how great it is now. So,
right. If only he would have sold the copyright to Brigham Young, the whole train would have got started a lot earlier. But yeah, I mean, that's something else that you can hit him with is like, test Joseph Smith as a prophet, test him, or, even talking about the word of wisdom, which is something they hold very tightly to. Oh, tell me about the word of wisdom, tell me about that. And can we read it and see, what the dietary restrictions are on Mormons and how well that reflects against the word of wisdom? Because the two don't sync up in a lot of places. For example, the word of wisdom allows beer. It allows wine. Mormons are completely against all alcohol, no matter what.
And coffee, right?
And coffee, but not hot chocolate. But, hot drinks are very strictly prohibited in the word of wisdom. So Joseph's ideas about what made a man healthy, wealthy, and wise as far as food goes is vastly different from what the Mormon church teaches today. And I mean, even that is, could be fun to talk to a missionary about. So, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but it does require a fair amount of base knowledge. And, I hope to try and give that knowledge in my show.
Yeah. Once again, it's www.nakedmormonism.com.
Are you interested in honest and open perspective and discussion? Do you enjoy hearing people challenge the status quo, even if it means examining the bumps and bruises of the free thought community? Do the reverberations of the echo chamber make everything you hear sound trite and jaded? Are you ready for a show that dares to hold all people up to the light, to examine our biases and blind spots? Are you a humanist? Then the Q might be for you. Come check out the secular safe space for critical thought, cross-examination, and a caring ear, where it's humanism first, secularism always, and where I really don't give a shit if you're an atheist or not. Come join the conversation by searching for The Q on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever aggregator you use, but be warned, I've taken the padding off the sharp corners.
My next question I've got is, since you've done so much research of the church, and this is going to be something that this is going to throw you a curveball. What